Hello and welcome to DDOCast episode 362, recorded live on December 13th. I'm your host, Patrick. With me this week we have Propane.
Hello, everybody. Happy 12, 13, 14 day.
It is kind of a special little day there. I heard today is the day that most people get married this year because of that 12, 13, 14
Yeah, it makes
thing.
it easy to remember, I would think.
Well, and there's a lot of people who are very superstitious about things like that, and or just really like the coincidence of the day and stuff like that. So, more power to them. See, what would that mean? Trying to think if you get a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nah, it wouldn't really work next year, would it? Um, anyways, this week's screenshot: Steel Star creates a bear artificer in the 200 screenshot of the week. I think I didn't really pay attention because I was working a lot that week, but I think what they did was had the devs create pictures and everyone got to vote on them.
Yeah, I think they had three of them. There was a big cobalt and then kind of a dragon and a design grid matrix type screen.
There you go. There's the bear artificer. Um, kind of a fun little thing because I'm pretty sure you can't actually achieve that in game. That's just someone playing around on their end, but it's kind of a
I do
fun little
like the
shot there.
goggles. That's a good look.
The goggles are a nice look. We like to talk about Dungeons and Dragons online nearly every weekend. You can catch us through Google Plus Hangouts, YouTube, or the DDO forums, or from our website at DDOcast.com. DDOcast is hosted by Cyber Ears, the awesome podcast hosting network. Shows are usually available within a few days of recording, and the next show will probably be on Sunday, December 21st in the evening Pacific time. You can stay updated by following us on our social media pages or our website, DDOcast.com, with our calendar. And I can tell you I'm actually a little farther ahead than normal. Yay me. The next show is going to be on leveling, and we'll have Tolero and Even Note as guests for that as well. So
Very
it'll be
cool.
fun it'll be fun to have Tolero back on the show too. Haven't had her on in a long time. On the podcast this week, we will be talking about Update 24, which was released on Thursday. Their festival is also here, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And our main discussion will be about choosing a race. So we'll give you some ideas on kind of what you might consider for choosing a race for your character. So we'll start with game news, and the Update 24 was released on Thursday, December 11th. I'm not going to really read through the show notes, but I'm going to highlight some of the stuff that's here, and we'll kind of talk about each thing briefly in turn. First thing is the new quests, which are level 18 and 26, so 18 heroic, 26 epic. They kind of go along with some of the other Zoriat-themed quests in the 12. It seems to be a popular place for Zoriat, the 12, maybe because they're all mad there. The pack is 450 turbine points, but it's free to VIPs. There's 3 quests in that. There's also a 4th quest that was released called I can't remember the name of it. It has to do with the Tyranny of Dragons storyline that D&D as a whole is doing. That quest is free to all, and I haven't done that one. But I did run through the other series, which was weird. It was an experience. They are strange quests, particularly Terminal Delirium. You actually turn into a balloon, and you turn into a tile piece, among other things. And you have a dance contest with pullers, which was different. It was fun. It was very different, a little confusing. But the Delirium series of quests are pretty popular. At least I know the first ones. I don't know if I've actually run the second one, the second Delirium quest. Um,
It's good to get away from the dungeon crawl, do something a little goofy once in a while.
they were goofy quests. They were fun, for sure, and they were different, which is nice. Yeah, it was a very different thing. It was also kind of a funny though that there was one of them. I think it was Fashion Madness. I think it was Fashion Madness. It kind of went back. It kind of felt like it was going back to the roots of DDO a little bit because you were in the sewers, and it kind of had the old school sewer look to it. So that was kind of fun. The last quest you got to fight mud, which was interesting.
Hey, I need to get in there. I haven't got to try the new ones yet. Maybe this weekend.
My only real complaint was in Terminal Delirium. There's a room where you go through a mirror and have a big fight. A bunch of mob spawns, chain spawns, and stuff like that. and it had really terrible sightlines. And what I mean by that is that I play zoomed all the way out on my character almost all the time. And as you moved around, the stuff kept getting in the way. So your camera's either like doing this a lot, like going in and out a lot because it's running into things, or stuff just gets in the way and obscures your vision. So that was really annoying. And it probably didn't help that I was on a wizard, which one is not the hardiest of my characters, and two, that area just in general, you take more damage, I guess. At least that's my understanding. You can take more damage in there. And I'm running around a lot, so I'm dropping a bunch of crowd control to tell every monster that's there, hey, come find me and smack me on the head. And then I can't see anything on top of that, so it was a little bit of a challenging room. But otherwise, I found the quests to be fairly enjoyable. Also, with this update, we got weapon glamoring, so you can do that. I don't know, have you tried much glamoring?
I've done some. When it first came out, I was trying to do some Kenneth crafted stuff that was bugged, and after the patch, I was able to go back and get some of my mithril chain from back in the day that I like to look at and preserve the look. So I've had pretty good luck with it. I did do an alchemical shield here the other night, and that worked fine. So far, I'm pretty happy with it.
Mirrors of glamoring are a very popular thing. I'm just generally not a big cosmetics guy. I don't really care that much, other than the docent from Mind Sunder I put on when I first got it, just shortly after it came out, and I put that one away because I wasn't going to wear that. Other than that, I haven't really ever cared too much. I mean, there's some that I like better than others. And I think I bought like the ninja outfit.
I like the idea that I can pick a look for a character, then keep it through most of its life. So depending on the style or the history or background, it's kind of fun to pick a look and run with it.
Yeah, no, I'm in full support of cosmetics. I just don't care enough. Maybe it's because I'm a t-shirt and jeans kind of guy.
Well, then I think there might be a little less judging going on. Before, depending what shield or armor you had, people instantly knew what gear you had. Now it's kind of hit and miss on that.
Yeah, it's a little trickier, that's for sure. But there's definitely some really fun graphical stuff that'd be fun to kind of carry around a little more than you could before. So that's great. Let's see. A couple little things that I pulled out in addition to some of the big things we'll talk about. Tireless Rage, which was granted with 17 barbarian levels, now grants another +2 strength and constitution bonus along with a +1 bonus to will saves when raging. It still prevents fatigue, which is what it did before. So a little extra strength and constitution is kind of nice. That's the same standard bonus that barbarians, they get it at... I know they get one of those bonuses at 11, and they get one of those bonuses at 20, and I think they get a third set, but I'm not positive on that.
I can't help you there. I have yet to roll up a barbarian. Someday maybe, but that's one class I haven't actually explored.
It follows the player's handbook from 3.5, the progression for that, but I just don't remember off the top of my head. But anyway, they get another +2 strength and constitution as long as they're level 17 now. Healing amp changes have hit live, which... I don't know, I haven't really noticed that much. I've been playing a Pale Master. So, there you go. It's only been out since Thursday, so it's only been out for less than 24 hours. About 48 hours at this point. I can do that.
It is nice now that they have it on the character sheet, though. If you mouse over your hit points, it pops up with a little window that gives you some statistics. So I have a Radiant Clunk I need to go see how that's affected. That's the only real high healing amp character I got that may have won or lost on the update, but at least know what the numbers are now.
I think the general idea was that if you were above 250% before, or if you were under 250% before, you should see a benefit. It may not be a lot depending on how much you had, but kind of that was 240, 250. I think was kind of the make or break for if it was a positive thing or a negative thing for you.
I think that's about where I was. So when I remember reading it, I'm like, yeah, I'm about in the middle. I wasn't worried about it.
I did redo my barbarian's enhancements. I didn't play him, but I redid his enhancements, and he ended up around 240 healing amp. um, which is pretty darn
Great.
good considering he's Warforged. So I'm assuming there's a minus 50 to that as
Oh wow,
well.
that's pretty good.
Yeah.
One of my guildies has a cleric bard radiant barbarian, and I need to check in with him to see how he likes the changes because he has the aura going while he's raging away, so he might be quite happy.
Yeah, I think unless you had a lot, this should be a benefit. And even if you did have a lot, it should still be a benefit. One of the main reasons why they made this change, and the change, if you don't know, is it's going from a multiplicative system to an additive system. So if you had, it used to be you had healing application 30 and healing application 20, and it would multiply those together into your healing amp. Now it's just additive. So if you have healing amp 20, which became healing amp 40, and healing amp 30, which became healing amp 60, they doubled all the values to make them additive. Uh, it ends up being you get 100%, extra 100% instead of what you would have got before. So it's working more like spell power, melee power, all that stuff. The number that you get is representative of roughly 1%. I think that's kind of how it breaks down. So it's it should be beneficial just from the standpoint that you'll have there'll be more options to add healing after the game. They don't have to worry about because of multiplication, right? The more stuff you add, the more it spirals out of control. Whereas additive, you can have a lot of incremental bonuses, and it doesn't make a lot of difference because it doesn't matter how much you have, you're still getting the same benefit out of it.
Hopefully now maybe we'll see an augment or a couple more healing amp items drop in the game because they're fairly rare right now. So the fact they can keep them under control a little bit, hopefully we'll see them a little bit more.
And they did mention augments as being one of the reasons why they wanted to make this change. Monster Champions. This is the fun one.
Yes.
This is probably the most controversial one that came out. More controversial thing that came out. And the reason being is people are having an experience of the Monster Champions being particularly potently powerful. And well, I'm going to read some of the stuff that they've posted in regards to this. There's also, I'll note that there's an official feedback forum post on the forums if you want to kind of be in a kind of more of the conversation that's going on there.
Yeah, I think there were 3, 4, 5 threads, and they all got condensed into one spot, so it's a little easier to follow now.
Yeah, people were talking about it a lot, and devs wanted to make it easier for them to follow themselves to follow. So they put it in one forum post, so you can kind of have one conversation going. So these are some of the things that they've said, and there's kind of two distinct batches. So first, they expect improvement over time, including rewards and difficulty as examples. So keep that in mind. They do ask that you bug report anything on Monster Champions that seems wrong, and please let us know where you saw it, ideally including the dungeon level, difficulty, and a /loc location. If you type /LOC in your chat bar, you'll get a location, which will be almost entirely meaningless to you, because it'll be a random string, or a seemingly random string of letters, numbers, and spaces. However, the devs at Turbine know what these things mean and can kind of do that. They also want to know the names of any visible buffs if you can find those. If you're having problems, if you don't really know how to do that, if you examine them, you can just take a screenshot. There are icons that show what the buffs are, so that should help them as well. They also want to know if there's something that you want to see more of as well. Part of the reason they wanted to push Monster Champions Update 24 is specifically reaction to the game becoming generally easier for many players in Update 23, and they didn't want to leave that to linger too long for the new standard of gameplay. The champions are intended to put some of that challenge back in a way that adds interest in gameplay and is flexible for future improvements. They have said also in other not necessarily in this conversation, but in some of the other stuff that they were doing, that players have constantly said that they want adjustments to be made sooner rather than later when it comes to that kind of stuff. So, the level-specific items are, of course, already dropping in the chest mini-bosses. Monster champions sometimes drop. Mini-bosses currently have a greater elevated chance to become a monster champions. Non-mini-bosses have a less than 10% chance to become champions. They definitely want to see and hear feedback and live play experiences before they commit to particular changes. So if you're hoping for a knee-jerk reaction, you're not going to get it. But something they may consider is capping how many currently active champions are possible. Even at a relatively small chances, they realize there are going to be unlucky parties who face a group of many champions at once.
Yeah, if the chance is less than 10%, it's not much less than 10 because there seem to be a fair number of them out there.
We did have one spawn in the new stuff where I counted 7 or 8 champions just in a spawn of monsters. It was probably more like 30% of the number of mobs that came out. 30 to 50%. It was hard to tell how many there were because they spawned. I went, ooh, hey, mass hold and energy burst, and they mostly all died. So I didn't really get a chance to count a lot of them.
Yeah, with them just
The crowns after they're dead.
if they're just using a logic-based percentile, sooner or later someone's going to roll poorly, and there's going to be a bunch of them. All in favor of them adding a little more logic to it.
Yeah. As previously mentioned, currently only mini-boss monster champions have a chance to drop an extra chest. They also wanted to separate general monster champion feedback from specific situations in the new Terminal Delirium quest, which is both an extreme challenge and has elements that can cause players to take significantly increased damage. There's a few anecdotes popping up of monster champions hitting for thousands of damage, but as far as we can tell, these are special cases in Terminal Delirium. Spoiler, likely related to mirrors or balloons. Feedback is, of course, still encouraged, but other players reading the forums don't necessarily know this is an unusual situation and needs to be examined separately. So what's that responding to is a lot of people are posting on the forums that I just got hit for 1,500 points of damage and I have 150 PRR. What the heck? That's a lot. It wasn't just the monster champions. There's, like they said, there's cases in Terminal Delirium where you're susceptible to more damage. So it was a stacking and compounding thing, and they want to make sure that it's understood that those are two slightly different things that can come together and make it a lot more difficult. But that's the intent. Is that when you're in those forms that you will take more damage. So.
I wonder if they have the ability to customize the percentage per quest, because you'll think of some quests like weapon shipment, for example, because there's a lot of mobs in there. If they all become, 10%, 20% of them champions, that could get more ugly than it already is.
I had not considered that. That sounds highly amusing and interesting.
Yes, I may have to go check that out as well this weekend.
I personally have not found them to be that big of a roadblock. They have a little more hit points. But they're generally not too hard. Like if you got some crowd control, that's one option. I was fingering several of them, so as long as they didn't have death block on. So I didn't find them to be too much of a problem. They certainly, they amplify the damage, and it's pretty common that they do more damage, which, by the way, apparently applies to spells.
They have a few more hit points. We had a guild run this week, level 11 and under, running all the Vaughn series, and we ran into a fair number of champions, and it definitely changed our tactics a little. We saw one of the name beholders, 2 of us were running up the ramp, and we're like, that's champion named, we're going to wait for everyone else versus just plowing through it. So it definitely caused us to at least slow down and think about stuff a little bit.
Yeah, I ended up taking granted, I was in a lich form, so I was going to take more light damage anyways, but I took a sunburst that was about 1,000 points of damage.
Ouch.
Yeah, that hurt. But I didn't notice too much of a problem with them. Again, the only character I've really played since the mod came out was my Pale Master Wizard, who does not have a lot of PRR and does not have a lot of hit points either. But I wasn't having too much difficulty surviving. Other than in Terminal Delirium when I was turned into a mirror and couldn't see anything.
Yeah, I think that's basically a double whammy if you got people in a brand new quest, and then with the mechanic of amplifying certain damage types on top of the champions, I could see why the first experience was like, holy cow, people.
Yeah, but we ran through Giant Hold afterwards. We did Prison of the Plains, Madstone, and Tor. I didn't really have any problems. We were doing Epic Elite. We didn't even have a real healer. And we didn't seem to have too many problems, even with the champions in the game. Champions would generally, every once in a while, they get you on the head pretty good. I know one person got killed pretty quick by one, but it was one of the ogres that hits you 3 times at once.
Oh yeah.
So he got pretty well flattened. I got one-shotted once, but again, I was on a wizard, and I only took 700 damage, which would have been I would have been able to live through at the time, but I wasn't at full health.
Uh,
Um,
It'd be interesting to
so
give it a system another week or two and let people try different varieties of quest levels and etc. and see how stuff shakes out. But definitely an interesting change.
yeah, my impression is it's not gonna be a problem. I will really say I was surprised at how many there were. I was under the impression that they were going to be a little tougher and less frequent.
Yeah, I'm totally aligned with you. I was expecting them to be a semi-rare event and slow down and really have to deal with them, but it basically seemed most of them to be more speed bumps than crevices.
Yeah, if that even. I mean, they're not taking too much longer to kill. Um, but I was kind of expecting in my head random named monster, like orange named monsters, a little less powerful than those, but more or less random mini bosses in the quest, which
Hmm.
I was kind of excited about. I think the frequency, it wasn't what I was expecting. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It was a little bit of a letdown because I was thinking, oh, random mini bosses fights that could be kind of really interesting. Whereas it was kind of like every fight or almost every fight there's a champion. Partly because of what I've been running has large groups of mobs, so
Yeah, that
if
helps.
you're running into a group of 10 mobs at a time, you're expecting to have a champion every time. So
But one change we did, champions move high on the target list. Typically you look in the mob, find a caster, and neutralize that first. But now I think the champions are pretty high in the list. Beeline to them and take them out, then worry about the rest.
yeah, and I would like the only thing I'd say I really want to see out of them is I'd like to see some sort of a more of a bonus for everyone you're going to run into. Now, granted, if there's going to be this prevalent, it doesn't need to be that big, but I'd even like to see like maybe just one guild renown for killing a champion.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
a good idea. I do like that.
Something,
We
or even I was even thinking like maybe 10 experience or an experience point per level of the quest. On top
just
of
some
just for
little
killing a
cookie.
champion. Yeah, just a really if you're doing a number thing, it can be really small, 'cause especially they're so prevalent. I mean that's, but I think still that would be really beneficial. I think it'd probably lean more towards guild XP because it's kind of a nice little
Hmm.
carrot. And it's in line with what we already have in the game, anyways. Giving one XP might be a little too much, or something like that. But anyways, that's kind of where my 2 cents is. I don't have a problem with the mechanic. I kind of wished it was a little lower number, but I don't really have a problem with what it is. And I think it's certainly fair that the devs are trying to correct the fact that the game got a little too easy.
Hmm.
So
And I can confirm that some of the mini bosses we did have double chests on a couple of them, so that's especially thankful during the coin dropping season. So we were happy to see that.
yeah, we didn't get any extra chests ourselves, but we didn't have um, any that were named bosses anyways. So it was all just normal champions.
Yeah, Von 3 is a good quest for that because of the number of names bosses that pop up.
Indeed. Let's see. Librarian Enhancement Pass came with this one, and just a couple notes that I wanted to throw out there because they were in the week that we didn't have a show the week before last. The self-inflicted damage from Vicious is now gone out of the Frenzy tree. The design of Blood Tribute changed from the original design. It no longer scales with melee power. It instead grows into epic levels. And the current design of Blood Strength, which I'm pretty sure was what it was on live, I checked, but I don't remember because I wasn't looking at this at the time. It's 20% chance of healing your Barbarian level on hit, and 100% chance of 20 hit points on a kill, both scaling with melee power. So, other than that, I don't know if you had a chance to play with the Barbarian tree at all.
No, not at all.
I did redo my tree I went in on my Barbarian and looked at some stuff. There's definitely some nice things in there. Um, I am still highly unimpressed with Occult Slayer, and in fact, I will probably actually, if I remember, I think I may not have had any points, or if I had anything in Occult Slayer, I kind of did a couple iterations because I was kind of playing with stuff. So it's a little jump in my head, but at most with the Occult Slayer, all I took was the extended rage, because there's a lot of new bonuses that kind of apply when you're raged, which is nice, and kind of is more incentive to be raged. Whereas before I had been playing Barbarian essentially as an unraged melee a lot of times. simply because it was harder to keep alive if you were raging. But he's definitely got more hit points. He's definitely got more healing amp, and he's definitely going to do a lot more damage. Just because there was a few more action points to spend around. Some of the new stuff is more damage oriented, which is really nice. There's a little extra melee power in there, so I feel like it was a win. I haven't play tested him yet, but I liked what I was seeing.
Hopefully it'll help move barbarians closer to the top of the food chain for AoE DPS for melees. Nice that every class has its little niche. I forget which tree had the Tantrum, the cleave knockdown combo.
That is in the Frenzy Berserker, although I didn't take that.
Yeah, that one caught my eye. That was enough. I remember looking at that a while ago. I'm like, that's almost enough to make a character and see how well that works. So, to put it on my to-do list.
The reason I didn't take that was because of the Dreadnought tree kind of has a very similar thing in it already, and also because he's kind of running out of just my own gameplay style. He was kind of getting to the point where we had too many click to attack things going already. So I kind of made the decision not to take that at the time. Now, granted, I was kind of just his first pass and trying stuff out and whatnot. I will say though that I do intend to take his 2 fighter levels away. He had 2 fighter levels because I was really unimpressed with the capstones, but I do like the Frenzy Berserker capstone enough to make that change. It has a chance of doing like an extra 400 damage that scales with melee power.
So you gotta say goodbye to 2 feats.
I realized that, but it was pretty easy. Improved Sunder and Stunning Blow. His DC on Stunning Blow isn't really that impressive when you think about it. I mean, you get your Strength mod, and he's got a lot of Strength. But if I'm playing my Monk, which does a lot more stunning, and has a considerably higher DC than my Barbarian does, just because he's a Monk, I think I can live without it.
Yeah, DC is go high or go home. Yeah, if you don't go after some of the specialty items to get it way up there, it's definitely nowhere near as useful.
Yeah, he has some of that stuff too. It's 22 with an item, with a 12 item plus strength. It gets into the 40s, which isn't terrible. And then with improved Sunder, it's pretty good too. But I think the extra damage that he can get out of that will be very nice. He also ended up with a lot more rages because there was an extra rage enhancement that got doubled. So instead of giving you 1 extra rage, it's 2 extra rages. So
that's nice. Making the decision to be pure to splash a little harder. So that's good to give a nod towards pure a little bit.
Absolutely. The capstones were just unimpressive before, and now there's, I think the Frenzy Berserker one is like 10 melee power plus if you're raging, a 5% chance to do a nice spike in damage, which is what that character is also supposed to be about. Is big numbers. So even if he loses what little CC ability he had, he's a big number guy. That's the way that I've always played him and built him. Is I want big numbers. So if there's a 5% to do an extra 400 damage that scales with melee power, yeah, we're going there.
Go for that. You said you can still have trip in your hotbar.
Yeah. If I have room. That's what it takes.
Another button to click.
Yeah. Anyway, so there's the Barbarians for you. You can now unlock the Harper Agent tree with 310 Harper favor, which I believe is most, if not all of it. The Hall of Heroes has been remodeled. They were hinting at a teleportation mechanism between Forgotten Realms and Eberron Haunted Halls Hall of Heroes in the future. It sounded like the limitation currently is technical, but they're trying to work around that. At least that's what reading between the thinly veiled lines seemed to give you for that. I was in there a little bit. I don't remember spent a lot of time in there, but I did see more people hanging out in there, so that's probably good.
I wonder if any of the characters use them as a parking spot between logins as well. By having extra stuff there, it makes it a little more useful.
Maybe. I don't know that it really makes a lot of sense because you can just log in there anyways if you have it, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense to park there. But it seems it's certainly nicer than it was. It has more things than it did, and they're closer together, so that's nice. Item drop rates have been adjusted. I haven't played anything that was true, but yeehaw,
Yeah,
that's
open
exciting.
shipment, another reason to run it. Get your babble.
Yep. Let's see. The Temple of Deathworm, they adjusted the behavior of shadows in the raid to improve game performance. I did see some people testing that out. I don't really know what they found, but it sounded like they completed. So they fixed an issue that prevented the DDO store from opening correctly for Mac users who have the Yosemite update of OS X installed. I know someone emailed me about that, wondering what was up with that. So they did fix that. They also fixed an issue that could cause the client to hang on exit when being closed by pressing the X, which I do all the time. I'm happy about that. They changed the shared bank format. It used to be that all your items were just in one long list. Now they do pages of 10, which was also very poorly received, at least initially. There is a search function now there, which is great. I like that. However, if you want to utilize the search function correctly, you need to take anything that was in the bank when the update hit out of your bank and put it back in. Which
Yeah.
I spent a few minutes doing, and the search function works great, and I certainly have no problems. I love the search function, so I'm gonna say I can live with the change. It was nice to be able to kind of scroll through the whole list and not have to do the page thing, because people were having that hang up on them a little bit.
Yeah, I heard about the hang-ups. When I tried it, it was click, click, click. So if I have to scroll or click, that didn't make any difference for me. So
Yeah, I didn't notice any problems. And I certainly understand the initial reaction to the search function not working, but once I took everything out and put it all back in, the search function works just fine. It was kind of tedious to do, but I was watching a movie at the time anyways, so it wasn't too hard to do. And if you just start at the top and just unclick all the stuff and then go into your inventory and drag it back in the same order, it more or less ends up in the same order you had it anyways, so it's not too hard to do. Let's see. Players can. This is nice. Players can now trade multiple items at a time when using Barter UI. There's a little field that you can put a number in. So when you hit click or when you hit crunch, it crunches them all one at a time, but it does it without you having to click it, which was great when I needed to convert some combinations of valor into heart seeds because I needed more room for combinations of valor. So.
I wonder if it works with the challenge rewards, because there's some challenges that are much easier. So we often do the 2-for-1 on that. That could save quite a bit of clicking as well.
I think so. I haven't checked that personally. I did hear. I was talking in chats, and someone mentioned that they had converted a bunch of who was it lessers to graders or graders to lessers in can crafting, and they did a high number. They just put in a large number and just had it crunch it all for them, which was really good. There is a caveat here. There is a known bug with this. If you do this with something that is only meant to be done once, i.e., an item upgrade, it will still do the crunch multiple times and consume the ingredients multiple times without giving you any benefit. So do not use this feature with an item upgrade that should only happen once, or anything that should only happen once. Don't use this feature with.
You definitely want to click once, give it a second, back away, check. Don't click, click, click. That's cause problems.
Well, that's essentially what the feature does, right? Is it's click. It's a macro, essentially a macro that clicks for you, so you don't have to click it multiple times. But if you're upgrading an item, it'll upgrade the item, it'll consume the ingredients, and then because you wanted it to run multiple times, and it registered as being something that could be done the first time, it'll think it can do it many times over. So you can end up losing a lot of ingredients for no benefit. So there's an X that will also stop the trades in progress near the UI amount if you need to use that as well. So just be aware of that. And then the other thing, and I don't know if this was in the release notes, but I noticed it when I was running this morning, and we were talking about this last week. In Mark of Death, the Abbot's Fireburst is now evadable. It did not used to be, but you can evade it now. And my monk was very happy about that. He did not die in Energy Burst this time. The other thing that happened was the card cruncher the anniversary cards, the cruncher functionality went away. There's a post on this. With new festivals come new cards. Removing the card cruncher isn't really to stop duplication cheats. They are working on server-side code to prevent the server from activities that can cause items to duplicate themselves. They do hope this will close all the holes their players are using to cheat, but they need to keep looking for them. He understands that this might cause some extra cheating as players anticipate the changes, but they were looking for those activities ahead of the update and taking action on players using those techniques. And that's kind of all there was about Update 24. Anything you want to throw in there before we move on from Update 24?
Nope, that covered I think most of the highlights. I just gotta get some time and go check it out.
Actually, there was two things that I have on here afterwards.
The Holy Sword, I think, goes up.
It was stuff that was outside the release notes, which is why it's in a different spot for me. So the Holy Sword did change a little bit. They removed the plus W and reduced the plus 2 enhancement to plus 1. Again, they made that change because players have indicated that they would prefer tweaks to game balance to be sooner rather than later. And the spell currently provides the correct effect, but the description wasn't changed. Which is actually true of a few healing amp items too. I noticed that the name of the effect changed, but the description did not. So it's like healing amp 60. This provides a 30% bonus to healing.
Oh, they changed the title but not the text. Oops.
Yeah, they probably just ran out of time. And, it's a cosmetic thing. It doesn't really matter that much. The other thing they have was Druid forms. The elemental forms changed a little bit. There was also a post from Severlin that said fixing Druid is a large project. Druid forms definitely need addressing, and that's a complex change that will require tech to do correctly. They will probably do a Druid revamp with a much-needed third tree after they finish the third favored soul tree. At that time, Druid forms and Druid trees will be examined. So, all that to say, a third favored soul tree is coming, and then they're going to look at Druids.
It's nice to have that little sneak peek of what's coming down the pipeline, because I think our visibility has been pretty short here lately, so yay.
Yeah, well, I mean, we know the Temple of Elemental Evil is coming, so. But yeah, there's a nice little extra caveats in that little post there of what's coming down the pipe. They also mentioned that there will be some implementation with Update 25 concerning range power, which maybe means an enhancement pass on Rangers. Just thinking out loud. That's a possibility. That was kind of the news for the week. Here's some of the bugs that we're looking at. I already mentioned the UI barter thing. So again, don't use the multi-barter functionality if you are doing something that is only supposed to be done once. I think it's mostly item upgrades, so don't upgrade items multiple times. You'll end up losing a lot of ingredients. If you attempt to use a Glamored Weapon Aura on a cosmetic shield, it will consume the Glamored Weapon Aura, but produce no cosmetic effect. Shields are not meant to be used with Glamored Weapon Auras. Oops. There are a few healing application effects that have not yet been converted, specifically the Monk Shintao core abilities, the one in Exalted Angel, and the Cleric Positive Energy Shield. They are working on a fix for the collapsing floors not disappearing properly. Currently, that's slated for update or patch 1 for 24. There are things that are other than collapsing floors that you believe is related. Please give them details with a bug report. They do not believe this has anything to do with performance issues in game at this time. And perhaps my favorite bug of the year.
Yes, I saw this one.
The Mimic battle in Haunted Halls of Evening Star is not functioning correctly, in that once the Mimic is defeated, clicking on the loot causes another Mimic to spawn. So, if a party, basically, I think that means that for each person. So if a full party clicks on the loot, that will be 6 Mimics.
Oops. That's actually kind of funny, but I can see. Then you still get the loot or not,
pretty
though.
funny. Yeah. You still get the loot, yeah. You still get to loot the chest.
Oh, okay. That's not half. I thought you would.
It doesn't say that you can't loot the chest. It's just the.
That's actually funny.
Mimic. Who says bugs don't have a sense of humor?
Exactly.
All right, moving right along, and we got a lot of stuff to get to before we can get to our main discussion here. So we'll try and pick up the pace a little bit here. Festival, the coins will be dropping through January 4th, and the Jester will be here through January 18th. If you don't know what the festival is, basically you'll notice that if you're in Eberron, not Forgotten Realms, but if you're in Eberron, The quest will drop copper, silver, and gold coins. You can take those coins to the jester, give them to him, and he will give you goodies in the form of various cakes, occasionally, very rarely, special items, as well as coal and twigs,
I got a
which you
green
can just
steel
draw out.
quarterstaff last year. I was quite surprised to see that
Oh,
drop.
wow.
So some nice stuff does occasionally drop.
Yeah, I got a Sunblade once. That's probably the most interesting thing I got out of him. However, the cakes and cookies are actually really helpful, particularly if you're low levels. So if you're doing like a TR or if you're a new player, um, they can be really handy at lower levels. They lose their effectiveness over time because they're low level versions of the spells. Uh, However, like I said, they can be really nice to have um, at various points, particularly when you're at lower levels.
Level 5, Cobalt Assault, Blade Barrier. I mean, what's more fun than that?
Yeah, you can do fun things like blade barriers, ice storms. Um, the ones that are particularly useful. There's one that I think it still does. You can get a blur effect. You can get fire or cold shields. So there's some really nice ones. There's some healing ones as well, which is great. Um, I don't know if they give candy canes still. Jester used to give out candy canes, and then he stopped because there was something got messed up. But they put it in the recent ice festivals, and I don't know if it ever made it back to the Jester. Candy canes are like a 30-click self wand of healing, which thankfully enough works very effectively on Warforge too.
Yeah, I think almost any class can use them. So if you don't have any healing ability, those wands are kind of nice.
They are self only though, I think.
Yes, I
Um,
think you're correct.
but there's a lot of healing. But all I have to say, if you're a low level person, particularly, really look into this. It can be very worthwhile. Really improve um, your ability to get through some of that low level stuff. Um, or if do you have any tips you want to give for if you're looking for coins?
Not particularly. I mean, we might float a little bit through some of the quests like Tempest Spine, Vaughn 3, even the Shroud stuff that's got a high density of chests.
Yeah, Shroud's good. If you're low level and you're looking for a quest with a lot of chest, Irestone Inlet has a lot.
Oh, that's a good one. Yep.
And it's level 4 quest, so you can run it even if you're fairly low level, and get a lot of bang for your buck out of that.
I think even like the Explorer areas, even in Waterworks, there are a fair number of quests or names that drop. You can get chests fairly often.
They may be a little more finicky about whether or not they do drop. But if you want more coins and you want to farm for them, look for quests with high density chests in Eberron. You do not get them in Forgotten Realms. Let's see. There was no announcement about bonus days, so I'm assuming that either I missed it and I'm blind, which is certainly possible, or it's just the festival, which is what they've done in the past as well. So, store news. There are new items. The Heart of Madness Adventure Pack is 450 turbine points, and the Glamored Weapon Aura is 95 turbine points. The Glamored Weapon Aura is so there's the Mirror of Glamour, which gives you the cosmetic look, and the Weapon Aura gives you kind of the flashy bit that goes on the weapon, if you want that. Sales through the standard sales through December 18th, you can get 20% off of Astral Shards, Guild Renown Elixirs, and 50% off of Guild Charters and Guild Airship Beacons. The freebie for the week is a Greater Remove Negative Level Potion. The code is GRNL12, and you get one per account. I did not even know those existed.
I was just thinking, like, where'd they come from? I was in the same boat.
Sounds kind of useful if you don't have a restoration scroll. The December deals through December 18th, you can get 35% off of character slots, 75% off of the Warforged race, 50% off of Heroic True Hearts of Wood, and 50% off of the Hall of Heroes passport. If you are not VIP, and particularly if you have, there are things that you're looking for in terms of content or character building stuff, keep an eye on the December deals this month. They generally have really good deals. As I just said, 75% off of the Warforged race and 50% off of the Hall of Heroes. I think last week had a sale on monks, although I don't remember off the top of my head. But there's usually going to be some pretty good stuff in those deals, so keep an eye out for those. Community news. We have 2 chronicles to get through. 121st, Bonnie Bew and got a shout out for a walkthrough on teaching Shroud puzzles. Your DDO is having a turbine point giveaway. There's a note on Shadowpalooza. The Forever Knights of Orion are hosting a Christmas giveaway. The High Rollers of Cannith are also having a holiday giveaway. Tom116 is doing a holiday giveaway on Galanda. And Kendra and Friends on Thalanis are also having a 12 Days of Christmas event. A lot of holiday stuff. The guild for the week was 7 and Out, a new Wednesday night permadeath variant static group starting on December 10th. They have their own rules regarding difficulty, gear, and death. You can check them out. The comment for the week was, what is the history of the festival coin? It came out several years ago for like the first Christmas, and it's been coming out ever since. And we're going to move on for time. We got a shout out for our 300 our Mark of Death episode, and DDO players got a shout out for their 10th episode. DDO Gamer was wondering what it was like to be what it takes to be called a range build in a new write-up. He's kind of been talking about looking at his Mari build and how to do that in a couple of posts and what he wants her to look like, and getting some community input on that. Enrique looked at Zorian Cypher. The 122nd Chronicle, Shadowpalooza is heading to Wayfinder on Saturday. I believe that might be today, and it would be already passed because it was 2 p.m. Eastern Time. The Damsels of DDO went to the Haunted Halls in their latest episode. The Heroes of Hidden Folk on Galanda have a trivia event on Saturday, December 28th. It will be in the Anderville Fire Inn at 11 a.m. and 11 p.m. Eastern Time. The High Rollers from Cannith are still having their giveaway. Let's see, giveaway. Lecrae 1 is holding a Christmas giveaway on Orion. Lots of Christmas giveaways, so check the Chronicles if you're interested in those. Densetsu no Samurai is a Wayfinder-based guild featuring multicultural players who work as a group. Guild's looking for friendly and experienced players to join them. The comment for this week was, what is your favorite weapon, Aura, and why?
I go with the electricity. It's kind of a shocking view.
Nice. I don't really pay attention to them, to be honest. I almost kind of like it when they don't have one, just so you can see the weapon a little more clearly.
Yeah, some of the just basic artwork in the game is just very cool, and if you can clean off the aura and get a better look at them, I can see some people being quite interested in just doing that.
Yep. The DDO players had their 11th episode. DDO Gamer traveled to Subterrane. Even Note was tanking talks solo in the Shroud, and Order of Cycletica ran to do Spies of the House. I think that might have been his stealthy kind of series, how to do it stealthily. Enrique was looking at the Monster Manual. And let's see. And again, they have a Monster Champion thread and their official discussion forum if you have an interest in looking at that. Let's see, the videos that were going on in the last 2 weeks. There was an Update 23 preview video the week before last. So if you wanted to kind of get some background on what was going on for, that was an Update 24 preview video. Shows that I either didn't type correctly or copied poorly. Varguil, Norwars, and Knockback were on for that. The Weekly Wednesday this week went to the Sane Asylum and Acute Delirium. And Fallfling 8 and 9 did Attack of Stormreach, some more of that, and they also did Tomb of the Wizard King. So a lot of going on in videos. I think Voodoo also had some new videos as well. And he had a post about what he's been doing. He's working on a new kind of start from scratch project.
The Favorite Soul project?
Yeah, Favorite Soul Evoker, I believe is what it is. Some blogs news this week. The Measurement Guild had posts on survivability, which had some great tips, including some stuff on tactics, builds, and gearing. And also they post on run speed, including graphs, if you want to look at how fast you can get stuff to go. As we mentioned, DDO Players News had their 10th and 11th episodes. They're still doing a great job. They're also looking for co-hosts, so we'll link to that post in our show notes. And the Damsels of DDO had their 3rd episode of the Haunted Halls. If you are a fan of Cocktail Hour, you will love Damsels of DDO. They're a little bit more on topic than Samus and Melissa tended to be. However, they are equally as amusing and fun to listen to. And let's see, general gaming news. Team Turbine for Movember raised about over $2,000, which is great. Nice job there, guys. We like that. And then MMORPG is having a face-off of MMOs, and in the first round, it's a bracket style thing. In the first round, DDO beat Star Trek Online, and let's see if I can get an update on. I think we were winning. Round 2, it looks like I think it's already closed, but the page that I get shows that we were ahead of Guild Wars by a measly 1.3%.
Ooh.
Or, sorry, it'd be 2.6%. We were at 51.3% of the voting. So, by far, for that bracket, the closest of any of them. The newbie, they have a newbie bracket and a veteran bracket, and the newbie one has some that are a little closer. But as far as the veterans are concerned, we had a much tighter race with Guild Wars than anyone else did. So, if you are into that kind of thing and you want to support DDO, please go to MMORPG and kind of keep an eye out for the next round so you can vote for DDO and Lotro. Lotro's in there as well, which is also through to the third round. They won handily or they were winning handily. It was like 60 to 30% or something like that. So, okay, that's all the news. Yeehaw. There's the first hour of the show out of the way.
Yep.
So we're going to talk about races. And specifically, we're not going to really give as much of a rundown specifically what each race can do. What we're going to do is we're going to go through the basic races. We're not going to really look at iconic races. We're mostly going to look at the basic races. And just kind of give an idea of what the different races are good for in terms of build. What I want to preface this. It's not to say that you can't pick any race you want for any class. You can totally do that, and there's great builds out there that have used things that don't seem to make sense, like half-orc sorcerers. You can totally do that. You can have a lot of fun with flavor. What we're going to talk about is what the natural bonuses of the different races kind of lend themselves towards augmenting specific kind of builds.
And as far as race, that's one of the few character design choices that you cannot change with turbine points. You can change classes, you can change feats, you can change alignment, but you can't change race without doing a TR.
Technically, you can't change gender, but gender doesn't really do a whole lot for you anyways. So.
True.
So we're just going to go straight down the list, and we'll start with dwarves. This is almost an alphabetical list. We're going to start with the 4 races that everyone can have. These are totally free races, so we're going to start with dwarf. It's a free race. I have always I always like dwarves as tanks, personally, because they're dwarves. And that's like iconic thing, right? Dwarven defender.
Exactly. They get some nice con bonuses and hit points, and I do like them for fighters just because they do get the tactical DC in the racial trees, and if at all you're doing the tactics, the +3 on your trip and stuns and stuff is significant.
Yeah, just kind of some highlights of the dwarves. They get to use dwarven axes as a martial weapon, which can save you a feat in terms of you get an exotic weapon for free. Which is great for sword and board, my dwarf is a sword and board paladin. I have one of all these races, at least one of all these races, because I like variety. But my dwarf is a sword and board paladin tank, and it's really nice to get the dwarven axe as a free feat because it does glancing blows.
Mm-hmm. I have a tactical dwarven tank that sword and axe, I guess, or axe and shield, excuse me, but it's quite a bit of fun. I also like them for clerics, and I think it's just probably because of the con hit points. It makes you a little easier to stay alive with the extra beef.
Yeah, they lose a little bit of charisma, but they get a +2 to Constitution. But they tend to be a hardier race, and their enhancement tree kind of lends to that. They actually have, if you go through the Dragon Mark line, you can get the Radiant Shield for a Dragon Mark, which is pretty slick. It's 25% reduction in damage, incoming damage for about 30 seconds.
Well, they have Earth Grab on the top of the tree as well, which is kind of funky.
I think so, yeah. And they have some stuff that gives them extra hit points in their tree as well. It's actually one of the nicer trees. The only reason I don't have anything in the tree is because the other paladin trees are pretty nice too,
Mhm.
specifically the defender and the vanguard tree.
They do have the action point where you drink any pot and you get multiple benefits, and that's really handy sometimes. You drink one Cure Light and you can get your Remove Disease, and I think Heroism, which is very nice.
Heroism, disease, and poison neutralization.
Yep.
So that's kind of just some highlights of the race. As we were talking about, like, they tend to be a little hardier than most other races, and you get a Constitution bonus, which is really nice. And so you get an extra hit point per level, just by virtue of that. Um,
I think they're probably a good race if you're starting out fairly new to the game. You're healthier, you're going to have more hit points, you're going to stay alive longer. It's a good plan to consider starting there.
yeah, you don't see a lot of dwarven casters. They get a minus to charisma, which isn't great for sorcerers, although that's kind of less an issue for sorcerers because they tend not to be DC casters. I think the reason you don't see very many dwarven casters is more because there's other options that are a little better. They kind of lend themselves more towards being utilized for those classes and those kind of builds. But if you're looking for a melee build and you're looking for what race you want to pick, dwarves are a pretty strong choice, particularly amongst the free races. At least for kind of the more what you would think of as the more burly kind of things. Like if you want a fighter or a barbarian, they're a really strong choice.
Even Rangers, they do well. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're thinking about like doing a sword and board kind of style, where you're using a shield. What we mean by that is if you have a shield in one hand and a weapon in the other hand, that's what sword and board is. Whether or not it's an axe or a sword or whatever, it's kind of colloquially called sword and board. But you kind of are going to naturally look towards dwarfs and humans, and because humans get a bonus feat, but if you're going to get bastard swords with that, dwarves have it kind of becomes even parring with dwarves because they get the dwarven battle.
Yeah, it's almost a wash
axe for free. So it's a really really strong choice if you're looking for particularly a heavier armored kind of build or a barbarian or that kind of thing. I don't know if it actually translates to the game, but in pen and paper, dwarves can actually wear heavy armor without a reduction in speed. They run slower to begin with, but
that I do not know.
and speed's always kind of been a weird thing. I don't know that it actually does, but that's just kind of something that we'll call it a fun trivia fact for the day for the dwarves. So yeah, that's kind of what dwarves are probably one of the strongest races overall. It's pretty hard to pick dwarf and kind of screw up your build. They can kind of lend themselves. They have nice bonuses for just about anything you might want to do.
I think both dwarfs and humans have that ability that they're fairly versatile. They're typically not a bad choice. There might be something that's better, but they're actually not a bad choice.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Like I said, when you're talking about casters or kind of more the light fighters, it's like monks, rangers, and rogues, you don't see a lot of dwarves in those kind of classes. Again, mostly because there's slightly better choices because of stats more than anything else. But doesn't say that dwarves make a bad choice for any of those characters. We've been talking about humans. Let's go to humans next. What do you like for humans?
I like their flexibility. If you don't know what race you want, it's hard to go wrong with humans. They get the extra feat, like you mentioned earlier, the extra action or skill point, so they're pretty flexible that way. And the healing amp they get in the racial tree, who doesn't need more healing amp? And if you want to invest in the dragon marks, the dimension door especially is very, very handy throughout the game.
They also have at the bottom of like on the first tier of their tree an ability that I believe extends their hit point range. I'm trying to remember what it does. There's something related to hit points that's pretty handy in there that I kind of like in their tree. I would say their enhancement tree isn't as good as dwarves. Just in general, the dwarves you can get a lot kind of really geared towards a specific thing that's going on. The one thing that is kind of nice about their enhancement tree, though, is they have their first. I think the first one is an action boost, but it's multiple selector. So you can pick pretty much anyone that you want, and get a moderate action boost with that. Whether it's a damage boost, a haste boost, there's a spell point, uh, a spell power boost, which I think is the only spell power boost in the game. So those are all really nice.
Even the save boost, if you got a trap, you need to run till you hit that save boost right before you go.
Yep. The one that I was trying to remember is Don't Count Me Out. Your range of
go.
unconsciousness extends by 5, 10, or 20 hit points, and you get 3, 6, and 10 PRR while you're under 50% health, which is a really nice low-level one. I have found some very nice use for that. As far as builds, humans are good for pretty much anything. It's, I would say of the standard races, it's pretty hard to beat a human for pretty much anything, particularly casters, because casters tend to be light on feats to begin with.
Yeah, anything that don't get a lot of extra feats, your cleric, favored soul, Sork, it's always nice having that extra feat, especially early on.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to go kind of more of a min-max theory, halflings kind of for like a monk or a rogue, dwarves for armored, anything that's gonna be like really armory or a kind of anything that you want to be more of a meat shield, tankish kind of thing, maybe, and then humans for everything else.
Another nice thing about humans is with skill, or not the skill point, the attributes, you get +1 to one attribute, either strength or con, and +1 to a different one. So while you're leveling up, you can take a look at the gear you have and try to even out to get nice round numbers, and you can flip-flop that as you level up. So that gives you quite a bit of flexibility.
Yeah, the humans that I have, my cleric is a human because I like the extra feat. Particularly if you're not going to be using, like we talked about, dwarves get the axe. Humans can use a bonus feat to get a bastard sword, so that's kind of a wash. But when you start talking about like casters, the extra feat is actually really nice. My sorcerer was originally a human as well. It made the extra feat and extra skill points really nice. I have a fighter that's a human as well. Who doesn't like more feats on a fighter? We don't have enough already. Actually, right now he's a 12 fighter, 6 ranger, 2 monk. But the human plays really nice with all of that stuff.
If you're trying to do any type of healing amp build, human and then half elf is nice to have because of the racial healing amp. I have a monk emeraldish tank build that's human for part of that reason, the healing amp and the extra feat.
Yeah, I think cleric is kind of. I really like this is a personal thing. I really like humans for a cleric. There's not really a race that you're gonna find that really benefits clerics. No, I don't think any race gets a plus to wisdom currently in the game. So you're not gonna get extra DCs out of any of that. There's a couple that you'll actually lose wisdom, I think. Maybe?
Yeah.
Actually, I don't think
I don't think some will lose wisdom either.
Wisdom's kind of a neutral stat. But so when you're talking about a cleric, you're not really gonna gain or lose anything for that in terms of your racial choices, but the extra feat on a cleric is really nice.
It's huge, yeah.
Because clerics don't get any bonus feats at all, and particularly if you want to play kind of more of an offensive caster, which mine sort of is, that extra feat you can get a lot of mileage out of that on a feat start build. For the same reason, they work really well for barbarians because you don't have a lot of feats on a barbarian. Rogue, again, anywhere you really need that extra feat, a human can really come in handy to really flesh out your build.
If you're undecided, human, it's a good way to go. You won't regret it.
Yeah, you cannot make a bad build with a human, or at least making him human won't make your build bad.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So let's talk about elves, which we're still in the freebie ones. Elf is probably the weakest out of all of them. They start with a minus to Constitution, which is kind of detrimental. So you're going to lose a hit point every level, which is not great. Hit points are kind of they're literally
Important.
they're life. I mean
They're
that's your life
important.
bar, right? Um, my elf is a wizard. Under the new enhancements, they're not quite as good because you have to spend a little more in there to kind of get it. Um, but there's uh, what's it called?
Fate tap.
Arcanum. No, Arcanum, which gives you extra spell penetration
Oh, okay.
and spell points. Under the old enhancement system, it was really easy to get. You didn't really have to do anything to get it. Now it's under the second tier, so it's a little harder to get to, which is kind of unfortunate. But they are kind of more along that time. Which one was the one that you were talking about?
I was talking about the Fate tap for some of the casters. They get a racial ability that replenishes some of their mana, and especially on a cleric or wizard where you're a little more mana limited, that is nice.
Yeah, there is that. I've never used it personally. I don't tend to spend a lot of points into my racial trees just in general. Um, but really, I would say there's the elven accuracy is kind of nice at first level just because it gives you a little extra point blank and range sneak attack ranged. Um, so
You know,
that's kind
I,
of nice, but
I have some guildies that like to do more unique builds, and the elf unlocks the arcane archer. So if you want to do some side of a cleric with some range capability or some other unique combinations, it's a way to get arcane archery without taking all the ranger levels.
yeah, there is that as well, which is probably kind of the highlight of the elf tree, really, to be honest. Um, Again, elf is not it's not really a strong race. It's I would say easily it's probably the weakest of all of them. Um, at least that's my sense. You don't see a lot of elves running around either. So, and really, if you want the arcane archer thing too, particularly if you're on a cleric, it's also in the Morning Lord tree, which is an elf.
Hmm. And the half elves
Elf
too.
race.
I think the half elves coming out have made the elf less popular as well.
Yeah, and that's really I think what kind of did it in, because the half elf, um, I think it does get it. Uh, it does get the arcane archer ability as well. And it has a few other things that are a little better.
Hmm.
For starters, you don't lose Constitution to start with.
Yeah,
Um,
that hurts.
yeah, that's not so great. So Elf is probably, unless you're going for flavor, um, it's kind of the weakest race that you're going to run into. Um, they don't really make good frontline fighters just because, again, you're losing Constitution to start with. They don't really have anything in their tree that's going to really augment any of those abilities. Um, they do get it. I think they're going to find they're immune to a few different things regarding sleep. I think they're easier to find stuff with, but other than that, their tree isn't really going to give you a whole lot of bang for your buck. So, anything else you want to say on elves? Or just move
Nope.
on to
I
halflings.
think that's let's roll on.
Halflings, the last of the four free races. Uh, Halflings are kind of a funny race, just because if there was a race that really brings out role playing or strong feelings in people, halflings it. Generally, at least that's my general experience is um, people love halflings more than they love any other race, just from a role playing standpoint. So they got that going for them. Um, they do make good rogues, in particularly. Excuse me. They get dexterity as their stat, extra dexterity as their stat, and lose strength. Um, so if you're doing something finessable, they make good rogues for that. Um, just in general. They have some healing stuff with their dragon marks, um, and even kind of their tree kind of goes along with like a light armored kind of theme, so you can get extra dodge, extra maximum dexterity bonuses. You get some sneak attack die. They do have kind of one of the more interesting action boosts in the game, because you can't use it on yourself. It gives it to somebody else on your party, the heroic companion, which can be kind of fun to use as well.
Yeah, I like the idea for halflings. If you want to be sneaky, if you don't want to be the frontline person, a halfling race is a good choice. The healing marks are fairly powerful. Now the fact that you can get the whole line for just spending 1 feat is a way to get a fair amount of self-healing. That's hard to get other ways.
Yeah, my monk has always been a halfling, and even under the old mark system, it was generally worth. This is before you could get rejuvenation cocoon or stuff, but
Mm.
um, I actually had invested him in the dragon marks to try it, and it was kind of even worth the 3 feats at the time. So it was, I think he was really around Tower of Despair when that was kind of the end game, was when I was really getting into my monk. Um, and it was pretty handy to have him be able to do a lot of self healing at certain points in that raid. Before there was as much of a prevalence of self healing, but they're still really strong as well if you have the extra feat.
I've seen some casters running around as halflings because they're sometimes a little light on the self-healing, and that's a nice get-out-of-jail-free card.
There is that as well for sure. Um, I would say if you're looking for kind of a light armor backstabby kind of theme,
More of a skirmisher.
yeah, like I said, monks they make good monks because they get a little extra dexterity. Um, if you're thinking about using weapon finesse, that kind of is lends itself kind of towards halflings because that's kind of their bread and butter. The classes that really get a lot of benefit out of weapon finesse and the classes you'd think to be using for weapon finesse and those kind of builds are really kind of halfling builds that halflings do really well at.
Well, there's several of the class trees now that allow you to use your dex for your to hit and damage modifier. I think that's caused the halflings to become a little more popular. You're not getting penalized on the strength side. So, for example, a quarterstaff build or a dual short sword build, halflings can be pretty potent on that.
Indeed, and even even if you losing one to hit and one to damage, um, by losing two strength too, so it's not that big of a deal.
And depending on your skill points, a lot of people would start with a 16 strength versus maybe a 15 with a halfling. You don't see a lot of people always chasing up to 18, just depending on the stat distribution.
Indeed. Let's see. Anything else to? I will say thrower builds
Yeah, I was just going to mention
work pretty
that.
well for halfling. You see a lot of halfling thrower builds, probably because they're top tier of their tree. You get a +1 confidence bonus to the critical threat range of returning throwing weapons, which is pretty nice as well. So
Yeah,
they,
my
they make good
quarterstaff
thrower.
build, it's a big F and stick build variant. The three monk with the halfling, you can pick up a throwing star and be fairly effective without having to try too hard at it.
Yeah, and their tree has extra sneak attack damage, which we've kind of mentioned too. So they really lend themselves well to those kind of characters.
And they're just fun
Uh,
to play.
yeah, they're fun to play, and I've seen a lot of clerics like again, clerics. It's pretty hard to pick a poor class for a cleric because the or poor race for a cleric because the race doesn't tend to or the prominent features of races don't tend to really impact cleric very much, anyways. But you can get a little extra healing out of the healing marks and stuff for with
Yeah, I've
halfling
seen
as well.
some
So.
actually halfling clerics just to augment the healing because you can use that quite a bit and not spend the spell points.
Yep. So there we go. So those are the four basic races, and they're free to everybody. Now I'm going to talk about the premium races, which you either have to buy um, or be VIP in some cases, or earn. And we'll talk about how you can do that with them. We're going to start with half orcs, which I believe even VIPs have to buy. At least I bought it as part of the expansion pack.
Yeah, I bought it back in the day as well.
Um, so half orcs, they're the only race that gets a bonus to strength. Their tree, I'm pretty sure their tree still has two-handed fighting
Yeah, it's two-handed fighting
enhancements as well.
bonuses, some power attack bonuses, and then they got the lock smash, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of a funny little thing. They also have um, they along with Warforge, they get a brutal fighting enhancement that allows them to increase their threat generation. So if you want to get some extra threat generation, that's an option. And I would say particularly if you're looking at doing sword and board, don't really take a lot of stock into that because there's some options with sword and board stuff generally to get that, or at least with intimidate too. Um, Half orc is kind of one of the idyllic barbarian kind of races. So if you think about doing kind of something more of a barbarian, like a two-handed or more of a offensively minded fighter, even half orcs that's really where half orcs kind of come into play. I would say that half orcs have probably lost some of their popularity simply because their racial tree and their racial enhancements aren't really that good.
I think they have the ones where you can gain short-term strength based on your health being reduced, but you try not to get too low on your health size for obvious reasons.
Yeah, that's kind of a hard thing to play to, just because other people are going to be healing you.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to really control that.
When I think of half orc, I think like Incredible Hulk, grab a big two-handed weapon, and go smash stuff.
Yeah, and they get extra damage to that stuff. So if that's a really strong way that you can go. They can get extra raging. And again, two-handed weapons is really kind of what they like. You can get that extra damage out of them, and you can deal some extra damage to help us creatures on there. You get some extra raging. So their tree really lends itself to barbarians. The problem is I would say that particularly after the last this update with the barbarian pass, the barbarian trees are great on their own. You don't really need to augment them with.
They always talk about redoing the class trees to try to improve them. Have they ever mentioned tweaking any of the racial trees?
I don't think so. I don't think that's really something they're focusing on right now. I think it's more about classes.
Yeah.
Balance the classes. I mean, again, we're talking about races and choosing races, but really in the grand scheme of things, races is generally a fairly minor impact to your character. Generally, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's some important things for these races when you're considering considering how you're going to build your character. But in the grand scheme of things, in terms of balance, they don't. You might get like a little blip, except for the iconic. I mean, the iconics can pull a few other extra things in there, particularly the blade forge. But otherwise, it's more like, I guess we should mention too that the Purple Dragon Knight and the Shattered Kai are both humans. Blade Forge is Warforged, which we haven't talked about yet.
Be another show.
Yeah. But, half orcs, they make great barbarians. I think the one thing I've kind of noticed out of half orc barbarians, though, is this is a kind of a running joke in my last guild for a while, that half orcs generally had worse healing amp than Warforge, because if you're playing a Warforged barbarian, most people who are doing that, of which I am one, and I'll talk about when we get to Warforge, they generally put a little effort into getting some healing amp, but people who are playing half orcs don't generally think about healing amp in the same way because they're not spreading out the penalty. So they actually usually end up with a worse healing amp.
They run in swinging and smash. If you want to grab a two-handed weapon and just go to town, half orcs your race.
And I will say though, if you want to have some fun with role playing, half orc casters are.
I tell you, one of
those,
my guildies has a half orc caster, and he does really well with it. We're actually quite surprised. He takes a quarterstaff and he beats the crap out of stuff to save spell points from time, and it's actually working really well for him.
Yeah, and just kind of jumping off that, if you're interested in doing like an Eldritch Knight, you can actually get a pretty impressive mileage out of a half orc Eldritch Knight, because you can utilize the half orc's two-handed bonuses. And use staves and get the cast that generally have a lot of nice casting bonuses on them, and kind of pair the two together and get a surprisingly effective build out of that as well. So, just for the record, my half orc is actually my ranger. Mostly because I didn't have a half orc, and I didn't have a half orc and I didn't have a range build, so I kind of combined the two. And again, range builds, it's pretty hard to go wrong with those, just because they don't tend to rely very much on the race. The one really kind of the fun thing about half orcs we should mention too is weapon size scales to your avatar, and half-orcs get larger weapons than everybody else.
You can't forget the half-orc dance. They do have a pretty good dance.
Maybe we should do a dance-off
Nah.
at the end of this. But
Say,
yeah, they do have a pretty good dance. One of the better ones for sure.
so
I'd
my,
say top 3 dances would probably be Warforge, half-orc, and halfling.
yeah. My half-orc is a fighter-monk mix because I needed more feats. I've been trying to do AoE fighter that have your cleave, great cleave, and whirlwind just lined up to go right down the list. So that's my half-orc experiment so far, level 15.
How do you like it so far?
So far, it's pretty good. You go through trip stun and the 3 area effects right now, and there typically isn't a lot standing after that. So we'll see how it goes up in epics. I'm a little worried about being a glass canyon, but time will tell.
Yeah, that's kind of the risk with half-orcs, but they don't really have anything that helps them defensively, but they get a lot offensively. Particularly as we've been hitting this nail on the head a few times with two-handed weapons. So.
Mm-hmm.
With that, we'll talk about half-elves, which came out with half-orcs, and I think you should buy them bundled still.
Yeah, I think it was quite a surprise. I didn't think was it one of the 2 races. We didn't know the other one was coming. I forget which
Yeah,
they
we
told
knew
us about.
half-orc was coming, and half-elf was the one that was kind of under the radar. And half-elf was actually kind of a really interesting playstyle build because they have so they're part elf, part human, so they can kind of get some of both when they're tree. There's actually a couple points where you can pick what you're doing if you take the tree all the way up. The thing that's kind of interesting about them is they have some stuff that's more geared towards diplomacy, intimidate, and bluff. And in fact, they actually get a second. I think they just get it automatically. They get a second version of each of those.
That's correct. I have a half-elf pure rogue, and it is incredibly nice to have 2 bluffs on different timers and 2 diplomacies. You can actually be fighting someone face to face, hit bluff, get all your sneak attack. He turns back around, you hit bluff again, and you get sneak attack yet again. So having the dual social timers is a very unique thing to the half-elf.
Back when Lord of Blades was the end game, and it was the old style epics, and intimitanks were kind of the best way that people were finding to really deal with them. We had a guy that made a half-elf intimitank that worked really well because he had both of those timers. So if you're going to do something that you're looking at and utilizing those timers or those skills a lot, half-elf can be a really strong choice because you get a second one. I believe the half-elf version has a longer cooldown.
Yeah, it's a minute, I think, versus 15 seconds or so.
Yeah, so you can't use it quite as often, but it's still really a powerful thing to have. You don't get the feat, you don't get the skill points, but otherwise you're essentially human with some elven bonuses and that bonus as well. I do also want to mention that they have a really low-level Tier 1 ability that can reduce physical damage you take by 25% for 15 seconds or until you attack. But it reduces your diplomacy, and it's also on a shared cooldown with your half-elf social graces. So you can't just completely button mash it, but it is a pretty nice ability as well.
One thing that is quite interesting about the half-elf is the dilettante feat. You really can mix in some different abilities with some classes that you normally wouldn't expect. For example, you can be your pally and mix in the UMD or the wand scroll usage of a Sork, for example.
Which is a really fun and really strong ability. You basically they have a dilettante feat for every single class, and then you don't want to take the one that you're going to take classes in because it's not going to be as they don't stack. However, you get a lot of nice bonuses out of them, and if you're not going to be a ranger and you're really interested in doing a bow build, half-elf is a really strong choice because you can access the arcane archer tree, and you can also get a little bit of bow strength out of the dilettante.
It's like 5 or something, yeah.
The dilettante, some of the action points have at certain points you get to increase the effectiveness of your dilettante tree. And I think as far as like you can end up using scrolls as a 10th level caster of specific of either arcane or whatever class you take, right? So either wizard, sorcerer, cleric,
You
and
need to
druid.
have a base stat of 13 upon character creation to be able to take that particular class version. So that's the thing you got to be looking at.
Yeah, that's a good point. But half elves really have nice versatility built into them because they can really utilize some of those the dilettante trees and get some kind of bonuses out of that as well.
And the level up stat points, they share the human ability to put between different stats. So you can either do 2 dex or you can do 1 strength, 1 con, 1 strength, 1 wisdom. So you have some flexibility there too.
Yeah, I think half elves kind of lost a little bit of the versatility with the new enhancements, just because the arcane archer was easier to pull off
Mm-hmm.
um, under the new rules. However, the again under the old enhancement rules, half elves really came into their own with the arcane archer because you could utilize arcane archer fully just by being a half elf.
Yeah, I
Um,
have an old 12 Ranger 8 Bard build that I have fun with, and it's currently an elf, and I really would like it as a half elf, but I got the character going and leveled up before the half elves came out. So if I ever TR that character, I definitely would switch to the half elf for that particular split.
I had a friend that had a bard that was an arcane archer that was really effective. And there was another person who had a favorite soul arcane archer that was working really well, and they were both utilizing half elf to make that happen.
Well, it's nice to add that second dimension to the character by giving them some range capability.
Yeah, if you're choosing a half elf and you're not sure what dilettante to use, rogue is nice because you get extra sneak attack damage. Just kind of if you're a melee, it's kind of an easy baseline one to go for. Or barbarian, which gives you extra hit points if you're kind of more of a caster. My half elf is a favorite soul. The main reason for that was there were kind of two reasons for that. One is I didn't have a half elf or a favorite soul, and two, the original build I was trying, which failed miserably, kind of worked a little better with a half elf. But it didn't work very well, so he's still a half elf though. But I mean, half elf is kind of it's human without the bonus feat and skill, with a little extra of a bonus. Kind of instead of getting the feat, the bonus feat, and the skill point, you get the dilettante feature, which can augment some stuff. But I don't think you really don't pick half elf just to get the dilettante. You're probably better off you choosing the dilettante to kind of augment.
Yeah, your main source, yeah. I think probably the half-elf builds are probably one of the more complicated ones to really properly mix in the dilettante and get the complement well. There's some really good options there, but it's probably one of the more complicated choices in your character building process.
There was this was before the enhancement passed too, but I had a guildie who actually made a really nice wizard. He made a half elf wizard, which was great in its own was good in its own right. But he used the dilettante to be able to use heal scrolls, which as a cleric, which worked really well. So that's kind of they're a little less of an elf and a little less of a human, but they mash the rest of them together, plus the dilettante. So it can be really strong race if you're not really sure what you want to do and you kind of want to play with something. It can be a really nice, really fun one to kind of play.
Mm-hmm.
They lend themselves to all kinds of builds. There may be better choices, but they do lend themselves really well to different ones.
Agreed.
All right, let's talk about drow. Drow, you are not free, but you can unlock them with 400 favor, which is really easy to get.
Yes, do not spend turbine points on drow. You can get them with a couple days of playing easily by favor.
Yeah, it's only 400 favor. Even though it might seem like the quests at low levels don't give a lot of favor, it'll go quick if you really focus on it once you kind of get rolling. And you can generally find some, if you just want to get on and unlock a drow, throw up an LFM and say, hey, please help me get favor and put it at all levels, and you'll probably get someone who'll help you cruise through a few things pretty quick. Or if you find a guild that's really new person friendly, and they'll probably find someone that can help you out with that as well. Having said that, drow. Drow get extra charisma and extra intelligence, which kind of lends themselves more towards wizards and bards, although it kind of also works for paladins. But again, they lose constitution, so they're not necessarily the best of frontline fighters. But drow clerics and paladins were kind of the in thing for a while. More than a little while, actually.
Yeah, I think they make pretty good two-weapon fighters. You used to see a lot of drow rangers running around just to be the light, lighter armored, but the heavy hitters. I think of the drow, I think of just like the blender, just chopping stuff up.
Yeah, they do get dexterity as well. The thing to know about drow, just right up front, is they're a 32-point build, but you only get to spend 28 points. Because they have a +2 to dexterity, intelligence, and charisma, and a -2 to constitution. So essentially, they're dictating where 4 of your points are going to go right off the bat, with the caveat that you can get any one of those abilities up to a maximum of 20 to start with. So just kind of keep that in mind if you're looking to build. Probably they make better casters than anything else in my general experience, because they increase your DCs for both of those. My personal favorite use for them though is a bard. That's really where that's what my drow is a bard. Getting the extra charisma, and also particularly with swashbucklers these days, you pick up weapon finesse, or the charisma to hit and to damage. Either way, you can really actually get a really nice bard out of it. They do look kind of fun. It's kind of cool around as a drow.
I think there are a couple of the popular throwing star builds out there that utilize drow because of their racial ability to get the extra toss per charisma or per dex.
Yeah, they get shuriken expertise for free or something like that, right?
Yep.
So that's another good choice as a thrower, shuriken thrower build.
That's kind of a niche build, but there are a few of them running around that's gained a little popularity.
Thrower builds in general tend to be fairly niche builds. But yeah, you can get a lot of mileage out of those. Again, this is probably between. It's a tough call for me, but I have to say that half orc and drow are probably my 2 least favorite racial trees. Again, that's kind of a personal preference. Part of it is because the tree just doesn't, almost for me, it doesn't really know what it wants to be. It's got stuff in there for casters, it's got stuff in there for melees, so it's a little bit of split, which isn't a bad thing. It's just at the same time it kind of hurts a little bit of stuff. You can get an extra enhancement or enchantment DC out of it, so it's not a total loss or anything like that. But
I think the squishy factor hurts both elf and drow. The fact that you take that con hit, especially early on, those hit points are so valuable.
And one of the reasons why elf is not a great race choice is because if you're gonna pick an elf, why didn't you pick a drow? Because you still get the minus the con, but you get other stats to that as well. So,
yeah, that's one thing. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think the devs has mentioned it, but some brushing up of the racial trees to maybe some interest after they get the classes a little more squared away.
Maybe. I mean,
plug hint.
Realistically, the only reason why I have an elf and not a drow is because I wanted to have one of each race, but I'm probably actually going to turn him into a drow because you get the extra intelligence and it's a DC caster, so that'll help kind of get another boost out of that. But like I said, there are people out there who really like to have drow paladins, which can be really effective.
I think Lesa's pretty proud of hers. I remember her talking about it.
Yeah, and there's really nothing wrong with that. Particularly if you're going to really go for some of those charisma abilities, that extra +2 is really nice, and it does lend itself additionally to lay on hands. They just have fewer hit points, which is something to consider. But there's particularly in today's world, even in a game, you can get a lot of hit points. So that's certainly less of a concern at higher levels at endgame at this point today too. So, but yeah, the casters work really well in particularly favored souls or paladins in the divine tree as well. And there's also some folks out there that like them for rogues as well. You get the plus to dexterity and intelligence. So assassin rogues can get a lot of mileage out of these as well. I kind of would say generally stay away from kind of more on the fighters or barbarians. Other than rogues is kind of a really nice combination. Monks are kind of a little bit more. Again, you're losing constitution, so that has to be considered.
Yeah, if you're going to use it for more of a melee, you want to take advantage of the dex side of it.
Yeah, so if you're going to do that, go in that direction. But again, bard, sorcerer, and wizard are really strong choices for drow. Just because particularly if you're not playing your drow as much of a frontline melee class, which is kind of what my bard more is more of a casting and healing bard with a little bit of swashbuckling to make him a little more interesting and fun to play. Because I can. Why not? It's actually really fun to play the swashbuckler, but those are kind of the classes that really lend themselves. If you're gonna play a drow, look towards what your +2 is going into, and think of what you'll be using that for, and that's kind of where they play really well too. Last race, Warforged, free to VIP. Otherwise, you gotta buy it. You cannot unlock it. Other than that, Warforged. I'll just start here. This is probably my favorite racial tree out of any of the racial trees. It's the only racial tree on any of my characters that I actually make it a point to go up to the top tier. At least for my melee. It's actually not true of my casters, but I do really like. There's a lot of really nice things in the tree. Just kind of an example, at the top of the tree, you can get plus 0.5 weapon damage. There's an ability there that generates extra hate. You can get improved power attack. There's 2 weapon fighting glancing blow procs. You can get
your tactical feat improvement, like the dwarves.
So it's a really strong tree. I would say probably my Warforged is by far my favorite tree, followed probably by human and drow and kind of a close tie-ish kind of thing. Now, part of that's kind of how my characters are built. I'll be honest, I'm not effectively utilizing half-orc and half-elf as races. However, neither of them, or the half-orc isn't really that good of a tree anyways. But Warforge has a lot of really nice fun stuff going on with it. Warforge also have a host of immunities to different things like negative levels and exhaustion stuff. You can't hit them with that. They're immune to paralyzing.
It's hard to drown them.
Yeah, they can't drown. So you get a lot of fun stuff with Warforged, just based on what they are. You do have less healing amp, which I want to spend a little time talking about kind of at the end of this discussion for Warforged. But so that has to be considered. You start with 25% fortification, which stacks, which is pretty good. And you can improve that as well. I guess I should say that I'm not like their core enhancements. I don't really invest much in unless I need something to like go up the trees a little bit. But I really do like their trees and what they have to offer in there. You can get some extra PRR if you have adamantine plating. We should talk about that.
Yeah, if you're thinking of an Eldritch Knight, the Warforge is a pretty popular race. You can reduce your spell failure, and you can open up some self-healing options too. So.
Yeah. So just to start off with this, we should mention the Warforged wear different armor. They wear you have to use docents, but whether or not you're wearing light or heavy armor depends on you taking a a feat. You have to spend a feat. You don't get a bonus feat for this on either mithril armor or adamantine armor, which further affects how much armor class your docents give you. It's a different armor system. Is kind of the nutshell. Um, but at least as far as I've been able to tell, the advantage is you're automatically proficient with your armor. Although monks can't take either. If monks take either of the feat, they can't get key. So be aware of that. Did I explain that well enough?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, if you're a monk, you can't take one of the medium or heavy plating because you lose your evasion.
The mithril is light armor. You should make sure that that's really clear. There is no medium version of Warforged armor. It's either light or heavy. But so with that, let's talk about what kind of builds work really well with this. And Bladeforge is the Warforged version of this, and that comes with a self-healing reconstruct ability, which is pretty nice. These are actually pretty versatile races, even though they can be a little harder to play because of the healing amp penalty. I'd say first off, arcane casters and artificers make really good as Warforged because they can self-heal with reconstruct.
Yeah, anything that can cast reconstruct, you want to be considering Warforged just for the self-healing.
I did try my first run with an artificer. I actually made him as a human and tried out the construct essence, so he could reconstruct himself, but at a 50% penalty. It was useful and effective, but it was nowhere near as good as being Warforged.
And my first arty was a halfling, thinking I could do the self-healing and the halfling companions add to the buffing aspect of it, and I re-rolled and went Warforged as well.
It's not to say that you can't do it, and it does help you stay alive, but it is not the same thing at all. It's being Warforged as an artificer, it'll be much easier to stay alive. Same as wizards and sorcerers. Wizards can do the Pale Master thing, but a Warforged is going to be much more survivable, hands down. They just are. Because you can not only can you use reconstruct, but you can have more spells of each one of those at like 1 through. These are
different tiers of
spell and everything other than 9. Level 6 is where you start getting the mass spells plus reconstruct. It follows a very similar progression to the cure spells. Just there's no level 9 mass reconstruct, which would be kind of fun if there was more Forge parties. That'd be one little thing.
Have its own little unit.
The other thing that's nice is their first tier you can get repair amp instead of healing amp. You get a choice between the two. So it really lends itself to go either way there, which is a really nice feature of that. Other things they make really good for is you'll see a lot of Bladeforged monks running around. Because they actually work surprisingly well as monks as well. That used to be kind of more of a thing. Oh man, I wish I had looked this up earlier. There's a guy who made a monk Warforged build that was really popular for a while when Tower of Despair was kind of more endgame. And I can't remember what the name of it is.
The name of the build?
Yeah, I don't remember what it was.
Soul Survivor?
No.
that was the favored soul.
I don't remember what it was, but there are some fun things to do. Like the Warforged favorite souls were running around for a while because you could. They had some nice synergies with greatswords. There's kind of less of that these days than there was.
Well, I think when you looked at VOD and TOD, you're really looking for a Warforged tank build to help run those raids. So with those raids being a little less popular now, the need for the Warforged tanky types is a little less.
Yeah, the reason for that was because both of those had bosses that would curse, that would prevent healing, but would not prevent incoming repair. So you could just ignore the curse and just get repaired. Let's see.
Well, it's nice that they can have a tank though that can be healed by an arcane, even scroll healing. So with if you have troubles finding clerics, if you have a lot of arcanes around, you can typically step into the tank and roll the Warforge and still have the tanking, healing, or repairing option.
Which is one of the really nice things. If you have a large, like if you're like me and you really like having a large variety of builds that you can, or characters that you can bring to a party, that was really nice to have a Warforged tank that you can do that with and turn. They have that very nice versatility of turning an arcane into a healing person. Now, most arcanes aren't necessarily going to be geared towards that, and they might need to be told ahead of time just to make sure they got some recon
Oh, yeah.
scrolls, or make sure they have reconstruct if they're not Warforged.
My Warforge carries a stack of 100 recon scrolls just for that. Here, you don't have any. Here you go. Now repair me.
I think if you're going to be a melee and you're not going to be a monk, I really like him as a barbarian. That's my main character, as much as I have one, is a Warforged barbarian. Which is actually really nice when you're starting off because they're immune to the fatigue at the end of rage, even at level 1.
Oh, that's kind of nice.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice little perk. And Warforged don't have the greatest saves in the world to begin with, so being immune to several different things really helps, as well as a melee.
I have a Warforged tank pally left over from the TOD days, and he's running around with Vanguard now. But one thing which is really nice with the Paladins is the lay in hands actually hits you for the full amount, not the adjusted amount.
Right, you don't lose anything from their penalty.
For the healing amp repair issue.
Which you can get down to 20% with the tier 1 enhancements. So if you're going melee, definitely do that. So we've kind of outlined several different builds you can do here, right? Like they do make great melee. They make fantastic arcanes. You don't really lose anything by being divine. They do have some. They do have the Lord of Blades line of divine feats, which can kind of be fun. I never found the Juggernaut thing to be very, very good because it makes you completely immune to divine healing.
Yeah, it's very situational.
Really
you got to have a dedicated repairer to really let loose with that.
Yeah, if you're in a static group and you can really coordinate things, like if you can do an all Warforged party, you can get a lot of mileage out of some of this stuff, and really have a lot of fun doing something like that as well.
There was a forum post a while ago. It was about a Warforged party being artificers doing. So there's a light stacking damage ability, and if you had the whole party together, they'd help stack each other. Was it Favored Soul? I forget the details, but it was interesting of having a whole unit of Warforged that would just be a force to reckon with.
Yeah, you're not going to see a lot of Warforged that are kind of more along the lighter melee side of things, other than the monk. Don't really see a lot of Warforged rogues or rangers, even with Bladeforged. Bladeforged kind of brought back Warforged in popularity to a certain extent because of that self-healing ability. It was really nice, and they look pretty spiff and cool too.
Yes, new shiny.
So there you go. Anything else you want to say in Warforged?
No, I think we touched each race here pretty good.
Awesome. So we're going to go into the lightning post, which will kind of lead directly into this because the survey question for the week is asking, will Warforged be Uber post-healing amp changes? This is kind of why I pushed this off a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know that they're just going to be. They're not going to be Uber in the sense that it's not going to benefit them more than anybody else.
I think it's going to reduce a negative. I think for Warforged had a negative rec of saying, hey, they're hard to heal. Some clerics would actually complain about the extra mana spend. So I think it takes away a negative more so than giving them a positive.
Yeah, I got this a lot with my barbarian. Is people would actually be surprised that I almost always had better healing amp than other than monks, everyone else in the group, than other melee in the party. He still takes a lot of damage because he's barbarian, but the healing amp was actually wasn't really hard. it wasn't too terribly difficult to get decent healing amp on a Warforged before. They'll get more healing amp now, but it's not to say that they couldn't before, and it's not to say that they're going to benefit more. They're not going to get more healing amp than other people suddenly either, because their healing amp enhancement reduces their penalty. It doesn't give them more healing amplification, so they're not getting extra healing amplification now. So I wouldn't say that they will be uber post healing amp changes, but it will certainly help them as well as everybody else. If that makes sense as an answer. If you do play a Warforged melee, give some consideration to your healing amp because you're starting with a 50% penalty. At least take the line that takes you down to 20%. If you don't fully invest in the tree, like I said, it's a great tree and there's a lot of great stuff in there for melee. It's not as useful for casters other than the repair amp, but for melee it can be really nice.
Help your cleric out. Give him a chance.
Yeah, get some healing amp, and it's not too much work to get more out of a heal scroll than a recon scroll. I've been doing that since Cap was like 18 and VOD was out, without too much difficulty. So there you go. The other thing I kind of stuck in here in the lightning post section, this is relating to Market of Death. We were talking about Market of Death last week. I kind of thought of a tip that I wanted to share this week. If you're unsure if the other sarcophagus has been destroyed when you're in the two rooms, the two side rooms, check the number of breakables in the quest experience panel. There are only breakables in the entire quest are the sarcophagi, so it will count for you. So that's
a nice tip.
Yeah, I thought of that this morning while I was running it. With that, I'm going to close out the show and say thanks to Propane, since we're in a little longer this week than I'm trying to. Thanks for listening to the show. Thanks for the other contributors to DDOCast. I really appreciate you guys being a part of the show. Probably have a little bit more input from those folks next year. I've got some stuff planned, so stay tuned for that.
Awesome.
Thanks to Turbine and Wizards for making some fun games, and thanks to Cyber Ears for hosting the podcast. You can hit us up at DDOcast.com for show notes, our calendar, previous shows, swag, and other fun stuff. If you'd like to be a part of the show or you just like to say hi, you can email us at ddocast@gmail.com. You can also find us on social media, follow us for latest cast updates. If you have tips you'd like to share or if you have questions you'd like to ask us, just leave them in the comments wherever you may be watching this or listening to this. Let us know that as well. The tip from the week: it's okay to play epic hard or epic normal and play unoptimized builds. Absolutely. Have some fun with your builds, for crying out loud. It's not all about min-maxing.
Yes, one of the strengths of the game. Go out, have some fun with some builds, try something new, and see what happens.
The other screenshot for the week, because there were two of them, Godov reaches the cliff's edge while exploring the Stardusk Isle in the 201st screenshot of the week. Also a nice bonus sunset there. So with that, until next time, may all your attack rolls be crits and all your chest level appropriate. Have fun, and don't forget to play with the different races and try them out.